Tremont Paris be back, or won't he? But what's the state of the program? Let's take a pulse. Let's have an autopsy. Let's cut this thing open, man, and see what's inside the South Carolina men's basketball program. Is it healthy, or is it tumor-ridden just by nature? And therefore, is it an attractive job? Could somebody come in here and do better? And if they do, what's it going to cost? And can South Carolina pay them? Where does it rank on the hierarchy of not only SEC jobs, which, and I'll throw this hand up again, best conference in all of college basketball, but in the NCAA in general? Are there mid-major jobs that are better than South Carolina? Schools that you presume don't have the resources to compete at the Division I level, but still more attractive. Make more with less? Is that one way of putting it? These are all things we'll pose David Cloninger when he comes aboard at 5:15. Here's some more good news. And I know I've been a bit of a Debbie Downer on this best and worst of the weekend. But South Carolina baseball sweeping the Ivy Leaguers from Princeton, the Tigers. They've won 5 in a row. 5 in a row. And you could say, oh, well, they're not beating the really good teams. Oh, it's 5 in a row is 5 in a row. It beats the alternative. And it's a good way to build momentum heading into conference play. The SEC schedule begins this week with Florida. Of course, there's a game with the Citadel. Don't forget the part at the beginning of that. On Thursday, before they play Florida. But 5 in a row is 5 in a row. And it's better to go into conference play on a heater than tonight. I'm just wondering this. How do you toe the line between riding the good vibes, straddling the good vibes, and avoiding being complacent? How do you do that? It's got to be tough. On the one hand, you want your team to feel good about themselves. You want your players to be confident. You want them to have fun. I know that word is 3 letters, but it's often associated with 4 letters, but you want them to have fun. But at the same time, you have to monitor things closely. You have to have your finger on the pulse. And you've got to do all you can to avoid complacency. You have to continue doing things that have resulted in 5 straight wins. Now, the level of competition presumably will be enhanced when conference play starts. But you still have to go through the same routines, the same processes, the same mindset as you did against the likes of, we'll arbitrarily say, Princeton. Or maybe I'm off the rails. Paul Maneri, the baseball coach of South Carolina, he'll make his regular visit at 4:30. I want to ask him that. How do you balance riding out the good vibes and avoiding complacency? Still being a coach to make sure that they don't get distracted, to keep doing the things that have resulted in 5 straight wins. Because baseball, more than any other sport, is a game of streaks. Hot streaks, cold streaks. There's always some kind of streak going on one way or the other. Preferably, you want to be on the good side of that. How do you keep that thing going? And then that'll lead into another question, the bigger question. How's the program? Compared to how he envisioned it, Paul Maneri, head coach of the Gamecocks, compared to how he envisioned it when he took the job a little less than 2 years ago, how is the program looking? How does it compare to that template he had in his mind when he told Ray Tanner, you know what? I think I'll come out of retirement. I think I'll be your head baseball coach. And in that less than 2 year period, what are some of the lessons he's learned? Good and bad. Good and bad. What have you learned? He came out of retirement after a decent little stint on the bench, about 4 years, I believe. Game had changed on the field. The game had morphed into something nearly unrecognizable off the field. And he's had to kind of adapt on the fly. What are some of the things that he's done, and what are some of the things that he's learned during this massive adjustment period? Just some big questions that we'll have for Paul Mainieri when he comes aboard at 4:30. Also want to get his take on that college sports roundtable that the president had on Friday. By the way, number one nitpick of this entire farce is that the table was not round, it was rectangular. Come on, man, you're stumbling out of the batter's box. If you're going to have a round table conference, have a round table. How about better yet, you just hook everybody up to Zoom? Would have saved a lot of people time. And maybe more people could have spoken. I'll chop that down later in the hour. We've got a lot to get to, though. We want all that and your phone calls on the best and worst of the weekend Monday, 803-404-6100, 803-404-6100. You're listening to the Postgame Show on 107.5 The Game. Postgame show. Terry and Jay out, Scott Hamilton in. Lulu Kesson of the Greenville News joining us about 10 minutes. Get her take on went down in Greenville for the Southeastern Conference Women's Basketball Championship game. Not what I expected. And I hate to say, I didn't have that on my bingo card because people are running that saying into the ground nowadays. But I didn't have that on my bingo card. I didn't. And a Texas win wasn't outside the realm of possibility, inside my feeble little mind. I get that. After all, they beat the Gamecocks earlier this year, 66-64, I believe, out in Vegas. And then the game that South Carolina won when they met as an actual conference game went in favor of the Gamecocks, 68-65. I thought we were going to see another epic contest. Instead, this is as one-sided as any game I've seen in a while. But between two elite teams, and I will say elite. Both of these will be number ones, more than likely, when the brackets are revealed for the NCAA Women's Basketball Championship on Sunday. But Texas came out to play, prepared, ready to roll, ready to rumble. Maybe that's the way to frame it. Absolutely just dominant out of the gate. 14-0 lead. South Carolina looks shell-shocked, as they should have. And how do you recover from that? Not just on the scoreboard, but physically and especially mentally. Just getting pummeled. You're getting shot after shot in your face. Next thing you know, it's 14-0. And they never led by fewer than double digits, they being Texas. Just stayed in command. South Carolina did make that run in the second half, got it to around 10. But it was always just a bridge too far, to quote the Cornelius Ryan book. Just a bridge too far, one step too far to get it inside that 10-point margin. Just shocking. We'll leave it like that. And South Carolina players, obviously dejected in defeat and still trying to recover afterward from those first 3 minutes. This is what Joyce Edwards had to say afterward. Dave, could you play number 1, please?
It was bad. It was bad on all the starters. We were supposed to set the tone out there, and we definitely didn't do that. But it happens. Throughout the whole game, none of our shots were necessarily falling. Things that we usually make weren't necessarily going in. And it just happens. We have other goals in mind, national championship. This isn't the end-all, be-all.
No, it's not. And that's fair. They have other goals in mind. And the more we get into this era that's defined by the college football playoff, the more that we get into this age of players being paid and load management, yes, the NBA phrase, load management, becoming more of a reality in college basketball and just sorts of other things that blur the line even farther from the professional sports to the collegiate model. They do have bigger things, and the conference tournaments don't matter quite as much. You could argue. Some coaches are up front about it. They say, yeah, doesn't matter. But, it's great, but it's all about the NCAA tournament. And I get it. A national championship is more impressive than a conference championship most years, because there are years when the Southeastern Conference is just elite of the elite. But still, this is not a good way to roll deeper into the postseason. It's not. They've got some healing to do, as I mentioned, physically and mentally. So how do you recover from something like this? Here's more Joyce Edwards.
Just pushing through mentally, physically. Obviously, 3 games, 3 days is tough, but we can't let that stop us. The tournament is going to be just as brutal, just as hard. We get a little bit more rest, but we can't let that the tiredness in the face.
Hell, yeah, it's a fact. They are blessed that they do have this window where they're not going to do anything. Don Staley's already said they're going to have off until Friday, and that's great. Regroup, refresh, reorganize, and then get back to work. Because this is a good basketball team. What we've seen for the vast majority of this season was not fugazi. It was legitimate. It was not a mirage. This is a good basketball team that ran into the wrong team on the wrong day under the wrong circumstances. That being the Texas Longhorns on a championship Sunday when said Longhorns are extremely motivated to pull off something incredible. And they did. They looked great. Kudos to Vic Schaefer and crew, and we'll talk more about him later this hour. But I would be remiss if I didn't put this out there, and this is one of the questions I have for Lulu Kesson when she joins us in a few moments. How much of it was Texas being good and on point and focused and ready? And how much of it was South Carolina simply not being prepared to play in this game? That question was posed to Dawn Staley yesterday. Here's how she responded.
It's a little bit of both. I think they made plays. They forced us to play a certain way. Yeah, I mean, turning the ball over isn't something that you can start a game like Texas and give them a head start. Give them a 12-point lead. It didn't feel right, just from a mental and physical standpoint. You can try to keep pushing through, but every time that we would try to make a run, we had just like mental lapses, like uncharacteristic turnovers. Some of it was us, some of it was Texas, and they took advantage of it, every single who caused it.
Mental lapses and uncharacteristic turnovers. How does that happen at this stage of the season, on that literal stage, that being the basketball court in Greenville, which was a pseudo home game for the Gamecocks? How does that happen? What do they do to remedy it? We'll ask Lulu Kesson of the Greenville News on the other side. You're listening to the Postgame Show, 107.5 The Game. Got a little news out of Gainesville. Florida Gators have fired head women's basketball coach Kelly Ray Finley. Been the coach there since 2021. Went 93-75. That's a winning record. 18-15 this year, but 5-11 in the SEC. That ain't getting it done. Only one NCAA tournament appearance with the Gators, and that was the first season in Gainesville. So, coaching carousel beginning to spin in women's basketball. Spinning in men's basketball. Damon Stoudemire let go of Georgia Tech over the weekend. Earl Grant, former Clemson assistant, former head coach, College of Charleston, he got let go. Maybe Jeff Capel at Pittsburgh coming up? We'll have to keep an eye on that. Right now, attention on what happened yesterday in Greenville. 78-61, Texas beating South Carolina in the SEC Women's Basketball Championship. I was shocked. I expected a game for the ages because this season has been so wonderful in so many regards across the nation in men's basketball, but definitely in the Southeastern Conference in women's basketball. And I really said, man, this is the rivalry in the SEC. This is going to be championship quality on a Sunday. I'm stoked. Let's do this. Let's go. And it ended up just being 14-0 out of the gate. And I'm just wondering what the hell happened. Going to ask our friend Lulu Kesson. She covers South Carolina for the Greenville News. Lulu, you heard the question. What the hell happened?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing was that South Carolina just did not expect Texas to come out the way that they did. I say that because I think you always overall go into a game anticipating a team is going to come out on a hot start. But with Texas specifically, these are two of the best defensive teams in college basketball. The last basically 3 games between the two have been a 2-point, difference at the end of it. So I think that South Carolina, day 3, they anticipated everyone would feel like they did, which was a little bit mentally tired. And I'm not saying that as an excuse. I'm saying that as like, hey, South Carolina should have anticipated that Texas would just play as hard as they did from the jump. And as Raven Johnson said, they knew every play South Carolina was going to make. I mean, these teams have faced off 7 times since January, and Texas took advantage of knowing South Carolina like the back of its hand.
So if familiarity and fatigue are the 2 biggest factors in this, then can we jump to the conclusion that Vic Schaefer did a better coaching job than Don Staley?
That's a good question. I wouldn't necessarily. Here's the thing. I do think it appears as though Vic's scout was better. But also, I think the biggest thing was that, and this is why I'm not like fully ready yet to say, okay, this was all South Carolina being bad, less of Texas. Like, Texas finished 54% from the floor. That's the best a team has shot against South Carolina in 3 whole years. South Carolina had the 3rd best field goal percentage defense in the country for pretty much this entire season. Most teams shot under 45%. There was a streak where they held teams to under 30% for like 5 straight games in February. So I think South Carolina, yes, a lot of Texas's points were off initial turnovers, and that goes on to coaching and poise and scout the fact that they were able to pick off every single pass and take away every option. But I do think South Carolina anticipated, I think everyone did, okay, there's no way they're going to shoot this well. I mean, I think they went into the locker room at halftime shooting like 68% from the floor. They just could not miss. And in some ways, you kind of expect, okay, second half, things won't happen, but South Carolina just got themselves in too big of a hole to trade baskets. So even when South Carolina went, 66% in the third and Texas went 31%, it was just a little too late because of what, Texas had already done. And so in the fourth quarter, Texas was mature and they finished out 64%. Like, they weren't missing shots. It was their game to lose at that point. And I think South Carolina at some point anticipated that they wouldn't be, as successful in almost every single shot that they took.
Here's evidence, Lulu, that they were bullies and burnt orange. I want you to make sense of this for me. South Carolina had 14 turnovers. That's a lot of turnovers, but they also had 14 assists against 23 field goals. That's moving the basketball around very efficiently. So that's kudos on them for being able to do that. And they also had way fewer fouls. Texas had 21 fouls as opposed to South Carolina's 10, and yet and yet still led by double digits throughout the entirety of the game, was never really challenged. You talk about going in and doing what you want and sticking to a blueprint. That's what Texas did.
Yeah, for sure. And I don't think that South Carolina necessarily took it for granted. Like, a lot of people I've seen, like, oh, they thought LSU was their Super Bowl. Like, there was a lack of focus. Like, I don't think it's that. I do think the reality is for a lot of these kids, like, Raven Johnson has quite literally never lost an SEC tournament championship game before. Like, it's unfamiliar for her, but she's also playing with a lot of new pieces. Texas knew exactly what it's like to walk. Like, Vic Schaefer kind of had this really nice quote, was like, my kids knew exactly what it was like to walk into the locker room sad when confetti was falling from the sky. Like, it was the exact same scenario as last year in terms of these teams who faced off twice already in the regular season, and then were trying to, finish the tournament on top. And so I think Texas did exactly what South Carolina has done to teams all season. I mean, I asked Sanaya Latson in the locker room, like, you know what it's like to keep your foot on the gas when a team is just trying to pull off a miracle, and, one layup, one basket, one three-pointer just takes away all hope. And she was like, it takes your breath away. Like, it's so overwhelming. And that's exactly what Texas did. Every time the crowd tried to get into it, they, stuck to what was working, and South Carolina just had no answers.
Joined by Lulu Kesson of the Greenville News. Follow her on X at Lulu Kesson. Lulu, just a few more minutes, please. And I'm looking at this box score, and I'm troubled to no end about the number of minutes that some of these players turned in. Joyce Edwards, 35 minutes. Sanaya Latson, 30 minutes. We're looking at the starters just basically absorbing a vast majority of court time. That's concerning going into the NCAA tournament. Help me wrap my mind around this. Was this a lack of confidence on Dawn Staley's part with her bench, or was it merely her bench not being able to perform?
I would probably guess the latter, because I do think that Dawn, more than anything this year, has had to have confidence in her bench given the injuries. I mean, Joyce played 40 minutes against LSU. Raven played 35. Tessa played 36. Like, her starters were the sort of kind of narrative this year is like the starters were going to have to pull through. And she got to a point, I want to say she talked about this maybe early January, late December, where she was like, I don't like the minutes they're playing right now. Like, we need a little bit more. But it was her bench that was sort of getting hurt. She lost Maddie McDaniel for a little bit. It got McKeer. Isla McDowell was dealing with stuff. So I think, and she didn't have Turnaby's yet. And then so I think what helped in February was how well her bench was playing. I mean, I can't overstate how impactful Maddie McDaniel was off the bench yesterday, and, providing some life when, let's just kind of be honest, Tessa Johnson it was not her day. But Medina Okot had a really difficult tournament. So that's all to say. I don't think it's necessarily a concern, because I don't think Dawn isn't totally confident in her bench. But the reality is, like, if somebody is having a bad game, she has no choice but to keep, the unit that's going well. And so unfortunately for, Joyce, in terms of rest, Medina was having some trouble, and that's why she gave, her 18-year-old player from France some solid minutes yesterday. So I'm curious to kind of see how everyone comes out of this sort of spring break, pre-March Madness pause, because I think recovery will be helpful so Dawn gets, the full picture from her bench that she's seen so much this year.
I get that, and this 4-day break, I'm sure, is going to be extremely appreciated. But I also know, Lulu, that I'm not the smartest guy in the world. I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer. I'm no Alan Einstein. But this isn't a new thing to have this many games in this many days in that exact environment. Why is fatigue such a thing now? It can't be because they had LSU the day before. It can't be just because it was Texas. I'm having a hard time grasping why this team is tired now as opposed to the way it looked last year, year before.
I think because Dawn never played her starters just as much. Like, to your point, I mean, Dawn's bench led the team in points, I think, like 40.2 last year. Like, bench points, worked like 9 straight days through this tournament. But I think that she knew she had like 2 starting fives last year. And when you're able to do that, you're pretty much able to interchange and say, okay, who has the hot hand, you're staying in. And I think this year, more than anything, because her starters have, knock on wood for her, been the ones that have somewhat remained healthy, she's had to really, really use them, not because she doesn't trust anyone else, but because she didn't really have anyone else. And so that's bound to catch up with you. And I don't think it was necessarily like, oh, fatigue set in physically. I think mentally, South Carolina just was not prepared based on how difficult this season, we asked a lot of questions like, do you think having so many different rotations was going to help you, or was it eventually going to kind of be like, oh, there's no chemistry? And I think South Carolina was like, oh, wow, they're playing so well, they're gelling, they're great. But eventually when you play 3 games in 3 days mentally and have different scouts and different assignments, just having one person have an off day, it sort of might screw up some rhythm. And I think that's when mental lapses sort of come to be, when a team does something so unexpectedly like Texas did in the first quarter.
And my last question, Lulu, and we're going to stay on this train of thought. I'm wondering how this impacts roster construction next year, because while the vast majority of this roster returns for 2026, 2027, does she lean into the portal really, really hard in order to get veteran players who can, as you mentioned, maybe form another second wave, another starting 5 of sorts?
Well, I think that's a fair question, because she's bringing in a lot of talent, but right now at the high school level, obviously the portal isn't open yet. We have no idea who will stay, who will go. Like, as much, I don't think a lot of people fully anticipated the roster to look the way it did. But on paper, she's getting back Ashlyn Watkins, she's getting back Chloe Kitts, and, then you have a junior Joyce Edwards, and then you also might get Medina Okot back. So I think that she'll have, from a leadership, sort of from a veteran perspective, she'll have those missing pieces, but, they're somewhat young. Tanaya Latson, a senior, but I don't think it's totally fair to compare what she did at Florida State experience-wise to what's happening at South Carolina. Medina Okot, the same thing. It's sort of just Raven Johnson and everyone else right now. I think once you have Maddie McDaniel as a junior, you're going to have obviously Joyce Edwards, and I think even like someone like Agat McKeer is going to make a huge leap. So I don't know if necessarily she needs to go hunting in the portal like I think Shane Beamer needed to, where he needed to get a lot of veteran experience, elsewhere. I think Dawn is hoping that the natural growth, I mean, that's something you hear a lot. Like, Dawn often says, oh, they're a junior now. She says that about Tessa. Oh, she's a junior now, sort of kind of explaining a lot of her growth just by way of growing up. And so I'm interested to see, to your question, if she feels like she needs maybe like a backup veteran point guard, or if she trusts the fact that a lot of these kids are going to be, through a heck of a lot of experience.
It's a complicated question. She's Lulu Kesson of the Greenville News. Lulu, appreciate you hopping on today.
Thank you. Have a good one.
All righty, Lulu Kesson of the Greenville News. It's the Postgame Show on 107.5 The Game. Final lap, opening hour of the postgame show. Looking here at SoCon Championships tonight. Furman versus East Tennessee State. 7 o'clock on the worldwide leader, ESPN. Looking through some of these mid-major. I mean, the mid-major schools are so awesome. The mid-major tournaments are awesome. I covered mid-major schools for a few years, man. I always had a blast at the CAA tournament. It was a load of fun. But we're still trying to perform a post-mortem on a major tournament, that being the SEC Women's Basketball Championship. Texas's 78-61 win over the Gamecocks. And I'm going to use this time now to give Texas its flowers. I mean, what Vic Schaefer's done is really, really impressive. Over the last 10 seasons, take stock of this. 3-time SEC regular season champ, 2-time SEC tournament champ. Now, this is not just at Texas. This is at prior stops. He won a Big 12 regular season championship. He won 2 Big 12 tournament championships. He's a 3-time SEC Coach of the Year. He was a Big 12 Coach of the Year, 3 Final Four appearances, 6 seasons with 30 or more wins, and 6 different seasons ranked in the AP top 3. Vic Schaefer, man. And we talk about Dawn, who I just think is just in a class all by herself. We talk about Mulkey. We talk about Gino, who's, again, on his own deal. Vic, we got to give Vic more love. 5th straight title game going back to their Big 12 days. 3rd win, 1st in the SEC. And I think this speaks volumes about 2 things. 1, the obvious direction of that program, or rather the status of that program. And 2, the greatness of the Southeastern Conference. I look at the Southeastern Conference in women's basketball, and it oozes what the SEC was in football for so long before playoff expansion and NIL really became prevalent and all that. It's really a cool thing to see, man. And I still think an SEC team could win the national championship. Maybe even South Carolina. If Dawn can crack the code about her rotations, kind of what Lulu Kesson was alluding to last segment, I don't see a reason why they cannot win the national title. I know Gino's doing his thing at UConn. I know they're cooking at UCLA, whom Texas beat earlier this year, by the way. But I still feel good about the Southeastern Conference heading into the NCAA tournament. More than likely, South Carolina and Texas both will be number 1 seeds. But first, there's business to take care of. Right now, I want to get this. I want to hear Vic's explanation for what happened yesterday, how the Longhorns were able to pull it off. Dave, can you play number 6 for me, please?
I kind of thought it started back when we left on Wednesday. I just thought I had some kids that were kind of here on a mission. And sometimes what you don't know, doesn't hurt you. And for some of them, they have no idea what it's like to be in that game, in this arena, with those fans supporting South Carolina. And it's bad enough, it's hard enough. You have to play a great team like them, and then to get in there in that game, playing for a championship. And it just speaks so well, I think, and so highly of our kids. They're so tough today. I wrote on the board, today would be about toughness. It would be about resilience, and that they needed to bring an edge. And I thought we brought the edge.
He brought the edge. Freudian slip. He said, bad enough. He said, bad enough we have to play that team in this environment. Vic being one of the more vocal coaches with regards to the SEC choosing to put up its tents and have the tournament annually in Greenville. Well, my response to that is a lot of little towns, a lot of cities in Texas, Vic. Why don't you have them step up, put together a really nice package and say, y'all come down here. Open up your doors to the SEC to have the event there. But that's neither here nor there. We'll chop that topic up another time. Right now, I'm giving Texas its due. What it accomplished yesterday was impressive. I'm curious to see if they can come out with that same kind of ferocity, drive, and focus in the NCAA tournament when it's not quite as personal. What you get with Texas and LSU is, I'm going to say this, I think definitively the rivalry in the SEC right now. God bless LSU and all they're doing. But for the last couple of years, it's been all about Texas and the Gamecocks. We're going to put a pin in this topic. Move on to men's basketball next hour. Take a look at some conference tournaments in the NCAA, and then we'll also have our interview with Paul Maneri at 4:30. You're listening to the Postgame Show, 107.5 The Game. It's the second hour, the postgame show. Terry, Ford, Jay, they're not in. Scott Hamilton in. Dave behind the glass. And it's one of the best weeks of the year. I think it's one of the more underrated weeks of the year. I dig the first couple of days of the NCAA tournament like everybody else. Well, except for people who are running businesses and so forth, because all the man hours lost, people watching the games or skipping work or doing whatever to consume basketball. But this week's good, too. I love the conference tournaments. The mid-major tournaments have already begun for the most part, either halfway through, completed, or whatnot. And I'm looking at the CAA, which used to stand for Colonial Athletic Association, now stands for Coastal Athletic Association. And, well, they're not all on the coast, but a lot of them are. And they're going to have an issue. Now, they've got their semifinals tonight. Campbell versus Monmouth. Towson versus Hofstra. And this is in Washington, and it's not at the main venue in Washington where the Wizards play or when their ACC tournament is there. This is the other joint. But their issue is this. The top two teams in that conference already out, lost in the quarterfinals, upset. Campbell beat UNC Wilmington 85-70. So the Seahawks, who won the regular season title, gone, done, to a team that went 8-10 in league play during the season. Okay, well, those things happen. It's part of what makes March so special, makes it intriguing. You're going to have your share of upsets. But to have two? Towson curb-stomped Charleston, 81-56. I did not see that one coming. A 9-9 team just really putting the hammer down on Chris Mack and company. And to Chris Mack's credit, he's done an amazing job with the Cougars this year. Fantastic job with the Cougars this year. The way they started off, whoo, very shaky. Lots of injuries. And then the Connor Hickman saga, the transfer guard, grad student from Cincinnati. Is he eligible? Is he not eligible? Is he eligible? Not eligible? Oh, he's finally eligible. They really appeared to be trending in the right direction. But here's the rub. And this is the innate nature of being a mid-major team. More than likely, you are in a conference that is only going to get one bid to the NCAA tournament. One. The automatic bid that comes from the winner of the conference tournament. Well, in this case, it's not going to be the team that finished first. It's not going to be the team that finished second. So, A, whoever wins this is not going to get even a decent seed in the NCAA tournament, and B, they're probably not going to make it very far. The peeps at CAA headquarters have to be just compelling theater in their signature event, the conference tournament, yeah. But greatly reducing their odds of making hay on the biggest stage of them all? Yeah, unfortunately, also, yeah. Here's who's a lock, though, for the NCAA tournament. And it's a no-brainer, and I hate that we even have to have this conversation. Miami of Ohio. Miami of Ohio is 31-0. Miami of Ohio has won every game it's played, and by scoring buku points, lots of points. Miami of Ohio is ranked in the top 20. I'm trying to think about where I had them on my ballot when I turned in my AP vote, top 25 ballot this morning. I think I had them 18th-ish. Let's take a quick look. But while I look that up, I'll make this point. They still don't get respect. Now, do I think of Miami of Ohio? I had them 16th. If given the opportunity to play, let's arbitrarily say Illinois, 7th-ranked Illinois, do I think Miami of Ohio would win that game? Probably not. But have they earned the right for the opportunity? Absolutely. My concern is that despite going 31-0, and let's assume, and we should never assume, we know that old saying, but let's assume Miami of Ohio wins the MAC championship. Finishes the year, 34-0, 35-0 going into the NCAA tournament. Where does the selection committee put them? At a 4? Maybe a 5? That's harsh. Because one of the truest truisms that we know with regards to the NCAA tournament is that 4, that 5, and often that 6 seeding range is dangerous ground. By that, I mean, yeah, we see a lot of 5s upset by a lot of 12s. You get my point. So the reward for Miami of Ohio by running the table, doing literally what it is asked to do, that being win every game on its schedule and its conference, the reward is to be shuttled off as a 5 to play a 12 from a major conference who more than likely played, let's admit it, a more arduous schedule and is probably better than the record. It almost makes the regular season seem moot, which a lot of people would tell you that anyhow, that the entirety of the college basketball season is literally condensed into 2 weeks. That's all that matters. 3 weeks? And this could bring up a whole other conversation about changing the schedule, starting the season later, so on and so forth. We'll put a pin in that and address it another time. I just hate to see a team go 31-0 and not get some kind of special reward. Give them a 3 seed. Do I think they're one of the 12 best teams in America? Probably not. But they earned the right to play at that level, on that line. I will say this also. It doesn't help. It does not help when you have people in the media, and I'm using air quotes because he's not really media. I'm still trying to rationalize what his role is on this planet now. When you have people like Bruce Pearl just already condemning a team and then blatantly supporting your former team and your son, the Nepo baby, Stephen Pearl. And we'll get to that next segment. It doesn't help Miami of Ohio's case when people in the media are just pummeling them and holding them down. Voices. Not necessarily the best voices, just the loudest voices. And Bruce Pearl's got a loud voice. We know that. I wonder this. How many games, Miami of Ohio games, has Bruce Pearl actually consumed this year? How many discussions has he had with members of the media that cover Miami of Ohio? How many? How many of his colleagues, wherever he's posted up doing his, and I'm using air quotes again, analysis, how many of them have given him some kind of sense of the skill level of Miami of Ohio, how they would do if they were facing a Houston, a BYU, teams that have gotten some recognition this year? Has he actually spoken with Travis Steele, the fourth-year head coach at the Miami of Ohio Redhawks men's basketball team? Probably not. Definitely not. I guarantee you he has not picked up a phone and called this man and said, sell me on your team. Tell me why you should be, A, ranked, and B, given a berth in the NCAA tournament, even if you fail to win your conference. Has he had that conversation? No. Text message? No. Carrier pigeon, telegram, mental telepathy, smoke signal? No. No, Bruce Pearl's just posted up on national television, belittling a team that's run the table and done it by scoring the basketball while also touting the ever-narrowing resume of his own son, Stephen at Auburn. Once more, we will get to that next segment. I have definite thoughts on the Nepo baby, Stephen Pearl, and the Auburn Tigers as we get closer to the NCAA tournament. One thing I'm monitoring here before we go to the break, just trying to keep up with any coaching firings. I mean, it is that season Earl Grant, the North Charleston native, let go yesterday at Boston College. Damon Stoudemire let go at Georgia Tech. Jeff Capel more than likely gone at Pittsburgh. It depends on how the Panthers do in the ACC tournament when that gets underway later this week up in Charlotte. I'm thinking the only SEC coach who's under fire right now is probably Lamont Paris. And there's been no indication of what's going to happen there. I don't think he's going to get let go. I don't think financially that South Carolina can afford to make that move. But wilder things have happened. We're going to ponder that and so much more when David Cloninger of the Post and Courier joins us next hour. And go over the big question. Is it a good job? If you are a coach with any kind of resume, any kind of experience, options, if you have options, and South Carolina is presented to you, do you take that job? Or is it going to be doomed to be a stepping stone for a coach who's at a mid-major looking to get up to the Power 4 level, or a career assistant specifically at the Power 4 level looking to become a head coach? I don't know. Anything is possible in this day and age. Indiana football has proven that. Indiana football has shown that you can flip the mindset, the mood, the optics, the perception of your program swiftly. You got to have the right person, and you got to have the right amount of bucks. But it can be done, and it can be done for South Carolina basketball. But does South Carolina have the right person? Well, so far, year 4 under Lamont Paris, it does not look that way. But does that also answer the question, do they have the right amount of bucks? Well, apparently not that either. You look at the standings of the Southeastern Conference, and you see perched in the middle there, and again, we'll use the Nepo baby, Stephen Pearl. Reports are that Auburn had around a $12 million budget, 12 to 14. I've heard different totals from people in Alabama. $12 to $14 million to assemble their roster. Okay. That's more than twice of what we've been told for South Carolina, something around the 5 to 6 range. The difference, Auburn, even with twice as much money, more than twice as much, a middle-of-the-pack SEC team, while South Carolina's having to hit buzzer beaters just to keep from being dead last. The only way to enhance the program, the only way to improve it, is to pump money into it exponentially. It's the only way you can win nowadays, period. It's the only way. Does South Carolina have the wherewithal to step up and fund the program the way it needs? It'll be one of the questions we have for David Cloninger when he joins us next hour. We'll chop that up and more. But on the other side, though, more basketball. And I'm going to lay off the Miami of Ohio argument, but I am going to jump back on this Stephen Pearl, the Nepo baby at Auburn. You're listening to the Postgame Show on 107.5 The Game. David Cloninger with the Post and Courier coming up next hour. We got Paul Maneri coming up, baseball coach, South Carolina at 4:30. Here's some news. And we were talking about the coaching carousel earlier. UNC Greensboro has fired Mike Jones. School not renewing his contract. That's according to Pete Thamel at ESPN. UNCG went 15-19 this year, following 3 seasons of more than 20 wins. He'd been in the school for 5 seasons, or I presume since Wes Miller went to Cincinnati. So we're going to get more and more of that. SEC tournament starting on Wednesday. Kentucky Wildcats playing LSU in that very first game. Lost to Florida on Saturday, dropped the Wildcats down to the 9 seed. But that wasn't even the most interesting part of the Wild Saturday. Oklahoma beat Texas in overtime, which gave the Sooners the 11 seed. And then A&M needed 3 overtimes to beat last-place LSU to clinch the 6th seed, and with that, a first-round bye. And it probably got the Aggies into the NCAA tournament. So it's going to be a pretty interesting SEC tournament, I think. But here's the point I want to make. There's Auburn sitting at number 12. They're going to play Mississippi State, number 13, at 3 o'clock. It's on Wednesday, second game of the tournament. And Stephen Pearl has already started politicking. It's what coaches do. They politic. Hey, you know, you got to, we start making our case, and here's why we need to be in, and blah, 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 blah. And indeed, some projections have them listed as either one of the last 4 in or one of the first 4 out. They're in the conversation for a lot of folks. Even though Alabama beat the 11 tar out of them on Saturday. It was 96-84. It was much worse than that earlier in the game. Auburn has a 4-12 record against quad 1 opponents. 4-12. Now, they do have a strong strength of schedule. Third strongest, third most difficult in the Southeastern Conference, and they have a good resume of road wins, including one at Florida. But I just don't see how you can reconcile putting a team with a 7-11, 13th seed in the conference, by the way, maybe 12. What was it again? 12th. Oh, excuse me. Into the NCAA tournament when there are so many deserving teams that could really make hay out of that spot. I can't make it make sense. But Stephen Pearl insisted. Dave, can you play number 7 for me? Oh, okay. Well, while you're reloading that, it's basically Stephen Pearl saying, okay, we're in the SEC tournament. Here's the opportunity presented to us. We've got to make the most of it. Duh. They're not. All right, let's hear Stephen Pearl.
Yeah, I mean, it's win or go home. You know, I don't know what more urgency you need at this point. You know, we've put ourselves in a you know, in obviously a difficult situation, but also, you know, a great situation. We play in the best league in college basketball. It's the deepest league in college basketball. We have, you know, 5 of some of the best wins in the country. We have the best win in college basketball at Florida. You know, if you look at our quality wins, you know, and you look at other teams in the bubble, I don't think those teams get those wins. I just don't. So we've put ourselves in a position to be considered, and you know, I think our resume stands up against anybody's. You know, I'm not sure what the number would be tonight after the game. I don't know if anyone has KenPom pulled up, but I would imagine that we finished 1 or 2 in the country in strength of schedule overall, which is what the committee asked us to do. And you know, we played against some of the best teams in college basketball. You know, we went 2-2 against the conference champions of the SEC, the Big East, the Big Ten, and the Big 12, and we didn't play any of those games at home. So we have enough quality wins to be deserving to be in this tournament, but we understand that we got to go to Nashville and we got to make a run just so we don't have to be sweating it out on Sunday. So the urgency is, you know, this could be your last game if we.
Yeah. There's urgency. And no, they didn't play those games at home. 2-8 on the road. That's Auburn. 2-8. And, yeah, they do have a very difficult schedule. But here's the thing. Anybody can have a difficult schedule. It's successfully navigating said difficult schedule that gets you what you want, that gets you prizes. Auburn didn't really do that. 16-15, 7-11 in the SEC. So that means for every quality win they had at least one really bad loss. I'm looking at it now in its entirety. I am at a loss. Like, I'm looking at this one stretch during the middle of the season. They lost 3 of 4. Lost 4 of 6. I'm not captivated by it. Oh, and don't forget the losing streak. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 in a row, 7 of 8. You're not going dancing. It'll be egregious if this Auburn team gets an NCAA tournament invitation. Egregious. I'll call shenanigans. I will call my friend Joe Lenardi and say, Joey Brackets, what the heck? How did this happen, bruh? And he'll give some humorous explanation, but it still won't sit right. I just don't see a world where Auburn gets in. Now, maybe they get on a hot streak and win the SEC tournament. It could happen. It could happen to South Carolina. We mentioned that earlier. But the odds are extremely long. Extremely long. One more thought on the upcoming NCAA tournament. Before we close out this segment, get ready for our time with Coach Maneri. I'm curious who will end up getting the top seeds. I think Florida is the best team in the country. I truly do. The more I watch Florida, the more impressed I am. It was almost like at times they were playing with their food on Saturday at Kentucky. Injuries are going to shape a lot of brackets. There's a lot of key injuries that have happened, especially later in the season. I'm thinking about Caleb Wilson. I'm thinking about JT Toppin. How will that impact things? But this is going to present a wonderful stage for probably the greatest, and I mean that, the greatest freshman class in the history of college basketball. I truly mean that. If we were to have had a better class than this, freshman class, at any point, it would have already manifested. It would have appeared. Especially since the one-and-done era began what, 20 years ago, 22 years ago, where you had to go for at least one season before entering the NBA draft. You would think there would have been the convergence of freshmen of an elite nature who would have come together one season, but it hasn't happened like this. This one is absolutely phenomenal. We'll break more about it. We'll break it down more next hour, but we're going to get ready for our call. Paul Maneri, baseball coach, University of South Carolina, on the other side. It's the Postgame Show on 107.5 The Game.
Got a smash up this afternoon, Broad River Road at Kennerly Road, also downtown at Hampton and Hugh G, and a wreck at Ermine Road at Augusta Road. That one been there for a while, but causing problems. Your weather outlook for tonight, 61 for your overnight low. Tomorrow, 85 for a high. Wednesday, 88 for a high. Thursday, a little bit cooler, 70 for a high. 70% chance of rain on Thursday, and an overnight low of 37. Now, that's a big, big difference from what we've been seeing. But it'll warm back up a little bit. 65 for your high on Friday, 76 on Saturday, 78 on Sunday. Smaller chance of rain for those days. This is Captain Dave in the Traffic Center.
Second half, second hour of the postgame show. Scott Hamilton in for Terry and Jay. South Carolina Gamecocks baseball. 13-1 winners over Princeton, 7 innings yesterday. Riding a 5-game winning streak. Headed to the Holy City tomorrow. Going to play the Citadel. Don't forget the. You got to say the. They get a little touchy over that. Try to extend it to 6 before Southeastern Conference play begins on Friday against Florida. I'm wondering this. You've won 5 in a row. How do you straddle the fence between riding the good vibes and avoiding complacency? It's a big question. I'm going to ask the head coach of the Gamecocks, Paul Maneri. Coach, how do you avoid that?
Well, we're not going to be complacent. We don't have any room for that, I can promise you. We're actually starting practice in about 25 minutes, so our total focus is on the Citadel for tomorrow night. That's a tough team. They've played a tough schedule, and it's on the road, and we respect our opponent very much. So we're going to give the Citadel our undivided attention until the game is over tomorrow, and then we can turn our attention to Florida.
But how do you leverage the good vibes? Because, and again, you're the coach. You've done this a long time. You're the expert. But I have to think that this is valuable collateral for you to have a team winning, to have a team playing well. That's something that you can use as leverage to get them to keep going, keep playing better.
Well, I just don't believe there's anything called overconfidence. Confidence is something that is the secret to success, and I want our kids to believe in themselves. And the more you win, the more they believe in themselves. And I thought we had a really outstanding week. We had a couple of really tough ball games. We found a way to win. We had a great day yesterday, pitching and offensively. We swung the bats as well as we have all year. So I kind of just feel like we're just hitting our stride, and the kids are enjoying it. And, you can't look back at the games that we let slip away. You can only look forward to the present and to the future, and that's what we're doing. We're going to start hopefully a new streak tomorrow.
That's not cliche at all. It's always one day at a time, isn't it, Coach? That's a truism, isn't it?
Well, this sport is a very humbling sport, Scott. As soon as you start to think you have it figured out, I promise you it'll jump up and bite you. And if you look too far ahead, it's a daunting thought, as you going through the season. So, one thing I try to teach these kids is, just to live in the present. And I know it sounds like coach speak, but really it's the way you're supposed to live your life. Take it one day at a time. Enjoy your life. Enjoy the challenge that you have right in front of you. And when it's over, you turn the page and look for a new challenge. And it's the way to work your way through a long season, I can assure you.
How much more challenging is it to convey that to your players in 2026 as opposed to maybe the first few years of your career?
I don't think it's any different, honestly. They're all 18 to 22-year-olds, and they're young, and they have other interests in life besides baseball. And you just have to make them understand that, as soon as you take somebody lightly, as soon as you don't respect an opponent, they are capable of jumping up and biting you. I mean, just look around our league yesterday at all the teams in the SEC that lost to so-called no-names. LSU lost to Sacramento State. Work right on down the list. It happens to everybody. And as soon as you let your guard down, as soon as you don't play well, if you don't pitch the ball well, you can get beat by anybody. You can beat anybody, but you can get beat by anybody as well. And sometimes you have to learn your lesson the hard way, but it's something we try to drill into our players, to respect all of your opponents, but be in awe of none.
We're joined by South Carolina baseball coach Paul Mainieri. And Coach, I had intended on diving into the details of the game and the minutiae of the sport, but I would be remiss if I didn't just continue this train of thought. You're now at this stage in your career. You've been doing this a long time. You've seen it all. You've done it all. But has there been anything recently, specifically since you came to South Carolina, that you could say, wow, I can't believe that happened, or I learned a lesson, or something that really added to your own development and growth as a coach, even at this stage in your career?
Well, that's a pretty tough question, honestly, because as you mentioned, I am old. I have been around a long time, so there's pretty much nothing that I haven't seen out there. But every day is a new learning experience for our players, but also for coaches. And if you're stuck in your old ways, you just you can't survive. You have to adapt constantly. I've adapted throughout my entire career, or I would never have lasted this long. But believe it or not, I remember there was a day when players didn't own cell phones, and there was no internet, and there was no social media, and the agents didn't exist in the college players' world, and so on and so on and so on. So you adapt with the times. I love being around young people. It keeps me young at heart, and I have children, I have grandchildren, and you learn your lessons by dealing with young people and what makes them tick and what their interests are and so forth. And at the same time, you try to utilize your experience to try to guide them through the things that are most important. So, specifically, I can't say of one thing or two things that I've learned while I've been at South Carolina for a year plus, but people may not believe this because, it's been hard at times, but I really love being here, and I love being with these kids and working with them on the field every day. And I think we're going to surprise people this year. I think we're starting to hit our stride a little bit. Our kids' confidence is really growing, and we're certainly looking forward to this challenge this entire week.
You talk with enthusiasm about the game and about teaching and coaching, and I think there's great value in that, and it obviously is what lured you out of retirement and to take this job. But you also talk about surprising people. Here we are in year 2. Is the program where you envisioned where you took the job? Did you expect to have to surprise people at this stage, or would you have been at a different level? What were you thinking then?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a reason why there's a coaching change made. I mean, I don't mean that as a knock on my predecessor or anybody else, but, there were some things that they found a need that there should be a change of leadership. And, when you take over a job, any job, there's a reason why that job's open. I learned that a long time ago. And I keep reflecting back. I mean, I had a 15-year tenure at LSU, and my first year at LSU was not easy. It was very similar to what last year was like here at South Carolina. And there was a reason why there was a coaching change at that time. And, you just can't do it all in, very quickly. And, what we've done is we've tried to teach and coach the players from last year. We've retained some players that are great leaders on our team this year that have made significant improvement. And then we went out and recruited a really good class, mostly through junior colleges and transfer portal. But these kids are starting to hit their stride a little bit. A guy like Logan Sutter is finally starting to swing the bat the way that we thought he could, and he's making a big difference with our team, as are many other guys. So guys like KJ Scobie and Talmadge LaCroix are providing great leadership for us. Our pitching staff is night and day better than we were last year. Guys like Alex Valentin and came in and really gave us a spark. Brandon Stone certainly improved a significant amount. And then you got guys like Josh Gunther and Amp Phillips, new guys that came into and are now in our rotation that are pitching tremendous baseball. So I think we've got much better pitching depth I think that these kids are continuing to improve. Terry Rooney's doing a tremendous job with them. Monty's doing a great job with the hitters, and they're starting to hit their stride, as I mentioned before. And we're not playing perfect baseball. Last night we had a couple of base running blunders that we need to correct. But a couple of them were by a young kid, Will Craddock, who has played great baseball, but he's also learning on the run. And he ran a guy off of third base one time because he was running with his head down, and one time he missed his signal and ran on a sacrifice bunt, and it was popped up, and he got doubled off. But those are young kid mistakes. But the things that Will Craddock does are way outweigh. The positives way outweigh anything that he does negative, and so it's fun to teach him and see him learn and continue to grow. So, yeah, I like our team. I really do. I feel like our team is going to continue to get better and better, and we're looking forward to the challenge in the SEC games. But we still have midweek games every week, including this one tomorrow night. So we can't look ahead too far.
And, Coach, we've only got a couple minutes left, but I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you this question. And it's not – college football obviously drives the train for so many things, but this still, I think, pertains to you. Did you monitor the President's College Sports Roundtable, and would you have liked to have seen maybe somebody such as yourself from baseball who's been around for quite a while, who's seen it all, done it all, have been a part of that discussion group?
Well, I would have loved to have been a part of it, or somebody from college baseball. But let's face it, football is the straw that stirs the drink everywhere, and it mostly affects football and basketball. The SEC, it certainly, all these things affect baseball. And but look, it's a I don't know what term to use, but it's a very unique time in college athletics. Not necessarily for the better in every way. And there's some good stuff out there that's happening, but at the same time, if it continues down this path, I don't know, what the end result will be. So I'm glad the president, I'm glad Nick Saban, people like that, commissioners are involved, and hopefully we'll come to some really good solutions to solidify things in the future.
South Carolina Gamecocks are 12-5. They return to action tomorrow down in Charleston at the Citadel. He's head coach Paul Maneri. Coach, it's been a blast, man. I can't wait to chat with you again because I like the big picture stuff, and I think your perspective is valuable, man. Anytime you want to chat with me, give me a call.
Thank you, Scott. It's good to talk to you.
All righty. It's Coach Paul Maneri of the South Carolina Gamecocks. Again, they're going to play tomorrow at the Citadel. Don't forget the Citadel. They get touchy over that. South Carolina Gamecocks 12-5, riding a 5-game winning streak. Good stuff. Good stuff. Hey, he's got perspective. And we need to lean into people like that, especially from the non-revenue sports, because they are as impacted as anybody else from the constant evolution of college athletics. I don't know if it'll ever stop evolving until we get maybe, unions, organization, blah, blah, blah. But they're impacted big time. And I would love to hear more from people such as him. Good segment with Paul Maneri. You're listening to the Postgame Show, 107.5 The Game. Making a final lap. Second hour of the postgame show. Scott Hamilton in. Got another firing. Is this like Black Monday? This is college basketball's version of Black Monday. You know, that day after the end of the regular season in the NFL when it's just a bloodletting. Pete Nakos of On3 Sports reporting Arizona State letting Bobby Hurley go. Been there 11 seasons. 184, 166, made only 3 trips to the NCAA. Meanwhile, his brother, who might or might not be clinically insane, is winning multiple national championships. Where do you go from there? I mean, Arizona State's a cool place, man. Do you come back east? Do you take an assistant's job? Do you have some kind of buyout maybe? I mean, they're a coaching family. I want to say their father was a legend, a high school legend, I believe, in New Jersey. You come be an assistant for your crazy brother. I couldn't. If that dude were my brother, I would be so far away. He is nuts. He is nuts. And it's just a matter of time before he does something that gets him fired, if not arrested. I'm only a little bit, hyperbolic there. Only a little hyperbole. I'm telling you, that dude he makes me uneasy with the way he acts. Makes me uncomfortable. I enjoyed our time with Paul Maneri, baseball coach, University of South Carolina. And I appreciate his take when I asked him about the president's college sports roundtable. Because I agree. Somebody from baseball, non-revenue sports, there needed to be representation there. They had everybody else in the world there. They needed representation from college baseball, non-revenue sports. And how about a couple of athletes also, like current athletes, who can give real-life anecdotes about what's happening without any kind of bitterness? Because a lot of these coaches, I'm so angry that the players are getting paid and all this and that. Well, let's talk to the athletes who are actually getting paid. Let's hear how they're navigating it. How's it changed their lives? How's it improved their world? I just thought the whole thing was a farce. A farce. And they had some of the right people there in this room. And there's a lot of people, like 50 in this room. Greg Sankey, the Grand Poobah of the SEC, was there. The ACC chief, Jim Phillips, was there. Brett Yormark, Tony Petitti, Pete Bavacqua from Notre Dame. You also had Charlie Baker, the head of the NCAA. Then you had this just giant list of just people, just random people who were, politicians. Bryson DeChambeau. Why was Bryson DeChambeau, professional golfer, why was he there? I get that Tiger's on the list, Tiger Woods. I get it because he has some gravitas. He has business acumen. He's a voice I would listen to. Bryson DeChambeau, only if he's going to tell me about performance enhancers or maybe swing speed or something like that. Otherwise, I got no beef with that guy. No beef. So, I don't know. But here are my takes, though. Number one, the roundtable discussion was not held on a round table. It was rectangular. So that's kind of shifty to begin with. Okay, the optics of that are already making me feel uneasy. Number two, just so many people. The vast majority of folks in that room did not get to speak. And let's also face facts. These are 50 people. We'll arbitrarily keep the number at 50. These are 50 people who had 50 different agendas, 50 different problems. It's no different than if we put the commissioners of each individual conference, Power Four, Group of Six, put them in a room. They're all going to have a different agenda. So are we supposed to listen to each and every one of those as well? What it was, and this is my third point, it was a giant photo op for the POTUS. Now, I'm removing political whatever. This is not a political statement. This is just about this singular event because it pertains to sports. This was nothing but a giant photo op. It was like one of those old network all-star variety shows back in the 70s and early 80s where you would have the stars from different programs come aboard and have this huge gala where it'd be song and dance and skits and this and that. And you'd have Henry Winkler on stage with somebody from the Love Boat. You'd have Mary Tyler Moore, dancing with somebody from CBS, It was just ridiculous. Barnaby Jones or whatever. It was just ridiculous. It was like a Dean Martin celebrity roast. We see those infomercials late at night about the celebrity roast from back in the day, and you'd have all these stars sitting at a table, and one by one they would step up to the dais and they'd make a crack, and and it was all scripted, but at the end of the night, everybody had fun. That's what this is. And the POTUS wanted to be the MC, the master of ceremonies. Point number 4, the final one. The smartest person on this list, no disrespect to Greg Sankey, Brett Yormark, Condoleezza Rice, anybody else in that room, the smartest person on the list said, screw that, and he didn't go. And it was Tiger Woods. When he saw the guest list, he saw how everything was laid out, the machinations of this thing, the logistics. Tiger Woods said, nope, I'm good. I'm staying in Florida. I ain't getting in that rigmarole. I got no time for that. Because what's he going to say? He would have gotten about 30 seconds to try to communicate something eloquently and effectively and then be done. Tiger Woods, the smartest person at the round table because he didn't go to the round table. That's hour 2 of the postgame show in the books.
Stop and go traffic on 26 westbound between 378 and Bush River Road. That's the 110 and the 108. DeQuincy Newman Freeway. That's 277 northbound, outbound at I-77. Got a wreck there. Also a wreck at Broad River Road in Kennerly, Hampton and Hughie, and 601 near Maine in Lugoff. This is just down from Lugoff Forge. Weather outlook. Well, it's going to be relatively cool tonight. 61, partly cloudy skies. Tomorrow we could see some morning showers. 30% chance of that. 85 for your high tomorrow. And then 88 on Wednesday. Thursday, 70 for a high. We're going to see some showers on Thursday. 70% chance of rain and a low down to 37.
It's the final hour. Postgame show. Scott Hamilton in for Terry and Jay. They're off doing other stuff. We got David Cloninger, the Post and Courier, joining us about 15 minutes. Still trying to monitor to see if there are any more coaching firings. What I am seeing, though, and this blows my mind, and I kind of got off on a tangent about it last hour, and I'm going to try to avoid that this hour. Our buddy Joe Lunardi. He currently, a lot can happen, has 11 teams from the SEC making the NCAA tournament. All right, good on the conference. I dig it. It's not the historic 14 like we got last year, but 11 is a super strong number. I have to imagine it would be the most of any conference in America. But that 11th team is Auburn. Joey Brackets, man, letting me down. Not that he actually picks who gets in, who doesn't. He told me, and this was about a week ago, maybe a week or two ago, he told me that what he does is try to get into the heads of the selection committee, which can be a pretty arduous task. And for the most part, he does a good job. That's why I'm concerned about this. I'll fire him off a text in a moment and say, Joe, what's up? How can you rationalize and validate this Auburn team getting in? And then if they get in, where are they seated? That's what always fascinates me. The seating always fascinates me more than the actual field. That gets my attention. How do they determine the seating? I've seen some seeds that scratch my head. I've seen some that went, oh, that makes total sense. Sometimes it's been enlightening because then they'll go through their rationale and I'll be like, oh, okay, I dig it. So let me see if I can get any enlightenment from our pal Joe Lunardi. It's the best and the worst of the weekend, by the way, 803-404-6100. Give me a call. Let me know your best and or your worst of the weekend. And we know what the worst is. It's the Gamecocks throwing up on themselves in the SEC Women's Basketball Championship. Texas deserves a ton of credit. South Carolina deserves also some blame. Texas came ready to play. 14-0 lead. I mean, that pretty much demonstrates your mindset when the ball goes up in the air. They came to play, and they never led by fewer than 10 points. That's coming in ready to go. In it to win it. Come on. That's what they were. They're Texas Longhorns. They were like the Marky Marks of college basketball yesterday. The good news is that both these teams should be number one seeds for the upcoming NCAA tournament. We'll find out on Sunday night. I have to imagine the other two number one seeds will be UCLA and UConn. But right now, we're still trying to digest and figure out what went wrong. It's just a good Texas team. It's an outstanding Texas team. And it's a good South Carolina team that went up against probably its worst possible matchup. Second loss it's had to Texas this year. The first was out in the desert, early, right around Thanksgiving. Then they flipped the script when it was actually a conference game in January and beat the Longhorns. Just a lot to unpack. But here's the thing. And Dawn Staley, God love her heart, she's compartmentalizing it. She's putting it in its proper perspective. And she's giving some historical value of what this could mean going forward. That the last time this happened, that being losing in Greenville in such a fashion, not even that fashion, but losing in Greenville, Gamecocks went on to win a national championship. It was in 2022. They beat UConn. It was Dawn Staley's second championship. And Dave, I misspoke. Can you cue up 4 for me and just tell me when that's ready? Because Dawn did. Okay, let's just go ahead and get to Dawn Staley. Here's Dawn Staley trying to put things into perspective as to what's next for the Gamecocks.
Our team knows we didn't play our best basketball, not nearly what we're capable of doing. And told them that the last time we lost in this situation, we won the national championship. So you got to think about that. It might be the very thing this team needs. It's not what I would think, yesterday coming in today, but now that we're here and it's a reality, you search for things that have a connection that can give your team what it needs to make this run for a national championship. I do think we have enough in the room to do that. We'll rest and recoup at the end of the month, at the end of the week, and start that journey.
There you go. Reset, reboot, and get going. And if they win a national title, it goes a long way to helping mop up the mess that was made in Greenville. I will say that. But still, you want to win your conference. You want to be your conference champ. Winning a national title go a long way to clearing that up, though. That's our worst for the weekend. Now, here's our best for the weekend. And it's kind of a backhanded compliment, sort of, maybe. South Carolina beat Ole Miss in men's basketball. Good on them. Good on the Gamecocks. 64-61. The win keeps the Gamecocks from finishing the regular season in last place. But daggone it, they had to get 17 points from Meechie Johnson. And daggone it, he had to hit a three-pointer with .7 left to get the win. This is what it sounded like. Dave, can you get that? Number 5, please.
They like it to come to Meechie, and here he gets it. Meechie in the front court with 3. Long-range 3 on the way. Got it! Meechie Johnson from deep on the right wing. And Carolina's up 3. Final heave by Dia. No, sir.
That's it. That kept South Carolina from finishing dead last in the Southeastern Conference. LSU, that's all you, bruh. You are alone in last place. A dubious distinction, if I do say so myself. Gamecocks are tied with Ole Miss for next to last, 12 games behind Florida. 4-14 in the SEC. God love their hearts. The program, not in great shape. Not in great shape at all. And it's incredible to think about because just 2 years ago, Lamont Paris had a season for the ages. 26 wins in his second season as the head coach of the Gamecocks. Tied a program record. Got a contract extension that year before the postseason. A parting gift from Ray Tanner. And what has happened since? Not a lot of good. 6-30 in the SEC. 25-38 overall. Having to hit three-pointers on the last day of the regular season to avoid being in the basement yet again. That's when your victories are framed that way, to where, well, at least we didn't finish last, you know there's a problem. You know there's a problem. But here's the bigger problem. Is it fixable? Is it correctable? Can this thing be turned around? Indiana football has shown it can. if you have the right person and you have the money and the internal fortitude to suck it up and do what's necessary. You got to pump dollars into the program, and you got to have somebody bold enough to manage the roster the way you need to and to identify talent. I will say this. Given the resources that have been put into the program, South Carolina is getting what it deserves. $5 million, $6 million, that's a lot of money to you and me. Absolutely. But when you consider that an Auburn, that I've been running just up and down, I've been railing on that program today. But when you have an Auburn that went 7-11 in the SEC, 16-15, basically begging to get into the NCAA tournament, you have that, and they are spending $13 and $14 million just to be mediocre? What do you expect when you have only $5 or $6 million for a roster? You get what you get, and that's having to hit three-pointers to avoid being in the basement. Does South Carolina have the fortitude to put more money into the program, an appropriate amount? And, bigger question, does it even have the money to begin with? Where do you get the funds to level the playing field or to elevate the program to a competitive level? Does it exist? It's a complicated question. Yeah, if you shuffle enough stuff around, you could probably find the bucks. But at what cost? To what detriment? Who suffers? Got to come from somewhere. There's no money tree as much as I've looked for it. And then you have the other decision. Who runs things? Is Lamont Paris, is he the guy and he just hasn't been given enough with which to cook? He had that one fantastic season. How did he do that? How did he do that? And why hasn't he been able to replicate it? Is it merely a dollars to dollars thing? Is it a money issue? Is it a talent evaluation issue? Did he catch lightning in a bottle? And we don't know if he's coming back. I think he is, because I just don't see South Carolina able to make a change. But forget the finances for a moment. When you make a change, you've got to consider two things. One, the money. And two, who do you get? Who would want that job? There are two types of coaches, that would look at South Carolina as a possible destination. One, the mid-major coach looking to get a Power 4 gig, and he wouldn't stay forever. Presumably, that was the way it was going to be with Lamont Paris. He was coming from Chattanooga after having been an assistant in Wisconsin. This was another step. He would come here, make hay like he did here too, and then move on. Or two, the second coach. The career assistant. The guy who's never really had that opportunity, who has toiled mainly at Power 4 schools, and he's ready to get his own gig. And this is his opportunity, a low-level Power 4 job. Other than that, you're not going to get anybody that excites the masses. You're not going to get anyone who wins the press conference, and that is a thing. You're going to get more probably disappointment on the day of the hiring, and apathy will continue. And you can mark this down before we go to the break. Mark this down. Apathy is worse than anger. It's the only thing worse than anger. At least anger elicits an emotion. Anger makes people reach for their pocketbooks and their checkbooks. Apathy, people are like, we don't care. Whatever. Is it football season yet? And that right now is what's blanketing South Carolina men's basketball. Apathy. We'll see if David Cloninger, the Post and Courier, agrees on the other side. You're listening to the Postgame Show, 107.5 The Game. It's a post-game show. Terry Ford, Jay Phillips out, Scott Hamilton in. Hey, the Gamecocks didn't finish in last place in the regular season. Took a three-pointer at the buzzer to make it happen. But a win is a win is a win, and Lamont Paris and company need all the wins they can, especially with the Southeastern Conference tournament looming in just a few days. Going to play Oklahoma Wednesday night, 9:30 tip-off. But forget about this regular season. Forget about this postseason. Let's take a deep dive into the state of the program. Is this program fixable? Can it be fixed? It's not like it was driven into a ditch. I said that earlier today because it's never really been on the road. This is how it's been historically for this program. What will it take to get it to a level of competitiveness? And does the school have the wherewithal, the mental fortitude, the internal fortitude to pull it off, a la like Indiana in football? Let's ask our friend, it's David Cloninger at the Post and Courier. DC, sum up the state of South Carolina men's basketball.
Same S, different day. I mean, when you really haven't had much success for the past 50 years and never any consistent success, you're just kind of chugging along. So that's what this season is. It's the second straight really bad year. But they did double their SEC win total from 2 to 4. So it's not as bad as it could be, but it's certainly not great.
So they doubled their SEC win total from 2 to 4, but they had to pay a lot more money to do it. Can you kind of work us through that?
Yeah, so obviously it's a new game now, with NIL and that kind of stuff. And when this first came in a couple of years ago, you're not going to get specific numbers, but South Carolina was able to get a 26-win NCAA tournament team for less than $1 million. Then the next year after that, which was last season, they increased that total by $1 million, and they got a team that went 2-16 in the league. So, okay, you need another increase. They increased last year's total by nearly 4 times, and you got a team that finished 4-14 in the league. So each time the total that USC spent has been last or near the last in the SEC. So obviously there's a question there, but in terms of this season, last year's team was pretty competitive. They lost 7 games by 5 points or less. You win half of those and you're in the NCAA tournament because of the strength of the league, but they didn't. And then this year, there were some times that they just weren't competitive at all. But they did win their last game. They got a little bit of momentum in the SEC tournament, so that's where they are.
What should have been the realistic expectations for the amount that's being pumped into this program? Is this what they deserve, or is it an issue of not making the most of that money and it's a talent evaluation situation?
Well, first of all, realistic expectations when it comes to South Carolina athletics outside of women's basketball and what used to be baseball, those are 2 words that don't even belong together. They just don't. But the fact is that for this year in particular, with the amount of money they spent, I really think that player evaluation was not what it needed to be. There are 15 full scholarships on this team, and for the majority of the year, you could not play 6 of those players. They were just unplayable. So player evaluation was definitely not a good thing this year. Again, I thought last year they had a competitive team. They just couldn't quite finish the last couple of minutes. So this year it really stood out that you paid how much for these guys, and they did this. That's not a good thing. And I don't know if, throwing more money at the problem is the answer if this is the kind of evaluation that you're going to get for your roster.
Joined by David Cloninger, Post and Courier. Follow him on X at DCPNC. DC, let's just go ahead and get this question out of the way. What's Jeremiah Donati doing right now? Coaching change, non-coaching change? What do you expect?
Well, I can't say what I expect, guys, because I really don't know. It's one of the things that he has been mum throughout this process, which if you're a USC fan demanding a change, that's probably what you want to hear. He was not going to say anything publicly because the only thing he could say publicly was, hey, I support my coach, and he'll get another year. By him staying quiet, you know that he's at least thinking about making a change. He's not ever going to say with games still to play that, hey, I need to see something or else, because then you're just cutting the team's legs out from under it. And look, guys, let's just say it. It's highly, highly, highly unlikely this team makes a run in Nashville this week and walks off with the prize. But it is still possible. There's a tiny chance that it could happen, and you know that if you said something like, I need to see some improvement, you're taking that chance away. So he's done what he's supposed to do. He stayed silent on the issue, and we'll see what happens after the run in Nashville is over. And it's going to come down to two things, guys, which we all know. There's $12.025 million real good reasons to keep Lamont. And on the other hand, there's, boy, did you see the results the past 2 years. 6 SEC wins combined ties the program worst over a 2-year record. And right now he is only above the infamous Steve Newton in terms of winning percentage during his tenure. And CLA was pretty empty the past 3 home games, including the student section. So does that overcome, undercut? Is it the same as paying out $12.025 million for a fresh start? I honestly can't say.
DC, let's close up this segment by playing a little game. We're going to play the what-if game, and let's say they do $12 million in somebody's couch cushions and they make a change. That's the next part of this enigma, of this riddle. Who the heck do you get? I mean, who would want this job?
Even if it's me and they do make a change, I go right up to Wilmington, North Carolina, and I sit myself on Takeo Sittle's front step. And I say, what's it going to take? Because I want you. You have shown you can recruit with a limited budget. You've shown you can win. It stinks that Wilmington lost in the first round of their tournament this year, but that's a really, really good and well-coached team. He's a young guy. He's a North Carolina native, played there at Gardner-Webb. I think he would come south. I think he would say yes. And there's a couple of other guys out there that I think would say yes. But with me, that's where it starts. And as for this program, it's like, well, look, the word is out among the coaching tree, among the agents. This is not a desirable job. So that's something else that you have to fight if you are going to make a change. Because as we've seen from the last few coaching changes, outside of Frank Martin, you're probably not going to get your first choice. Frank was the first choice, and he obviously did a pretty good job here.
How much does it take? What's a number that they would need to get a competitive roster in the SEC? Forget about Kentucky in the $23 million. Are we talking around 12 to 15?
I think that if they could get that, it would be a godsend. But right now, I think that you just got to look at, well, if you know what the number was this year and say that didn't get it done, do you increase it by almost double, maybe get it up to around $10 million? Would that do it? I mean, the price is always going to go up, and you have to wonder, all right, is this going to go for one superstar player, or do I try to find a bunch of players who will work well together? That worked in 2024. That built a great team because you had a bunch of guys who wanted to be here and who played well together. They didn't have a true superstar. They just had a few really good players. So now you just have to kind of split the difference and say, listen, you've got to go find a team, not just a player. And that has to be a better job than what they did this year.
He's David Cloninger, Post and Courier. Follow him on X at DCPNC. DC, only got about 30 seconds. What do you got? What are you working on?
Well, quite a few things. You know, baseball's about to enter the SEC season, and I'm going to have a piece coming up in the Post and Courier pretty soon about the women's team and where they're expected to land in the NCAA announcement. And wink, wink, it's very, very far out west. So we'll see what happens. But, yeah, if anybody's got any tips for what to do in downtown Sacramento, shoot them to me.
All right. You get him on X at DCPNC. David, you're the man, brother. We'll chat soon.
Appreciate you, buddy. Thanks.
All right, it's David Cloninger of the Post and Courier, breaking down the state of South Carolina basketball. Not the team. The team is different than the program. We're talking about the program and what's needed to reinforce it so it can be competitive and not have to consistently work to try to avoid last place in the Southeastern Conference. What a dubious distinction. Oh, man, we won, but we needed a three-pointer to keep from being in last place. Michi Johnson, the man that delivered them an escape from the basement. Get a T-shirt made. You're listening to the Postgame Show, 107.5 The Game. Hey, Dave.
Well, what in the heck happened here? I'm not sure. This is I-77 Wilson Boulevard, northbound on 77. The road is not completely blocked, but there's a right-hand lane there. Big slowdown because of Coca-Cola truck is involved in this situation. Looks like an accident. Several cars also involved here. Not sure what happened. Looks like the Coca-Cola truck's coming out of Wilson Boulevard. Someone tries to turn into the Coca-Cola truck. I'm not saying who's at fault here, but something weird happened there. So expect to slow down. Be careful if you're traveling on 77 north at Wilson Boulevard. Look out for that. Maybe stay out of the right-hand lane there. Also, in addition to that, we've got a couple of other problems. We got 277 north at I-77 with a wreck.
Right now, attention on what happened yesterday in Greenville. 78-61, Texas beating South Carolina in the SEC Women's Basketball Championship. I was shocked. I expected a game for the ages because this season has been so wonderful in so many regards across the nation in men's basketball, but definitely in the Southeastern Conference in women's basketball. And I really said, man, this is the rivalry in the SEC. This is going to be championship quality on a Sunday. I'm stoked. Let's do this. Let's go. And it ended up just being 14-0 out of the gate. And I'm just wondering what the hell happened. Going to ask our friend Lulu Kesson. She covers South Carolina for the Greenville News. Lulu, you heard the question. What the hell happened?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing was that South Carolina just did not expect Texas to come out the way that they did. I say that because I think you always overall go into a game anticipating a team is going to come out on a hot start. But with Texas specifically, these are two of the best defensive teams in college basketball. The last basically 3 games between the two have been a 2-point, difference at the end of it. So I think that South Carolina, day 3, they anticipated everyone would feel like they did, which was a little bit mentally tired. And I'm not saying that as an excuse. I'm saying that as like, hey, South Carolina should have anticipated that Texas would just play as hard as they did from the jump. And as Raven Johnson said, they knew every play South Carolina was going to make. I mean, these teams have faced off 7 times since January, and Texas took advantage of knowing South Carolina like the back of its hand.
So if familiarity and fatigue are the 2 biggest factors in this, then can we jump to the conclusion that Vic Schaefer did a better coaching job than Don Staley?
That's a good question. I wouldn't necessarily. Here's the thing. I do think it appears as though Vic's scout was better. But also, I think the biggest thing was that, and this is why I'm not like fully ready yet to say, okay, this was all South Carolina being bad, less of Texas. Like, Texas finished 54% from the floor. That's the best a team has shot against South Carolina in 3 whole years. South Carolina had the 3rd best field goal percentage defense in the country for pretty much this entire season. Most teams shot under 45%. There was a streak where they held teams to under 30% for like 5 straight games in February. So I think South Carolina, yes, a lot of Texas's points were off initial turnovers, and that goes on to coaching and poise and scout the fact that they were able to pick off every single pass and take away every option. But I do think South Carolina anticipated, I think everyone did, okay, there's no way they're going to shoot this well. I mean, I think they went into the locker room at halftime shooting like 68% from the floor. They just could not miss. And in some ways, you kind of expect, okay, second half, things won't happen, but South Carolina just got themselves in too big of a hole to trade baskets. So even when South Carolina went, 66% in the third and Texas went 31%, it was just a little too late because of what, Texas had already done. And so in the fourth quarter, Texas was mature and they finished out 64%. Like, they weren't missing shots. It was their game to lose at that point. And I think South Carolina at some point anticipated that they wouldn't be, as successful in almost every single shot that they took.
Here's evidence, Lulu, that they were bullies in burnt orange. I want you to make sense of this for me. South Carolina had 14 turnovers. That's a lot of turnovers, but they also had 14 assists against 23 field goals. That's moving the basketball around very efficiently. So that's kudos on them for being able to do that. And they also had way fewer fouls. Texas had 21 fouls as opposed to South Carolina's 10, and yet still led by double digits throughout the entirety of the game, was never really challenged. You talk about going in and doing what you want and sticking to a blueprint. That's what Texas did.
Yeah, for sure. And I don't think that South Carolina necessarily took it for granted. Like, a lot of people I've seen, like, oh, they thought LSU was their Super Bowl. Like, there was a lack of focus. Like, I don't think it's that. I do think the reality is for a lot of these kids, like, Raven Johnson has quite literally never lost an SEC tournament championship game before. Like, it's unfamiliar for her, but she's also playing with a lot of new pieces. Texas knew exactly what it's like to walk. Like, Vic Schaefer kind of had this really nice quote, was like, my kids knew exactly what it was like to walk into the locker room sad when confetti was falling from the sky. Like, it was the exact same scenario as last year in terms of these teams who faced off twice already in the regular season, and then were trying to, finish the tournament on top. And so I
Final lap, final hour of the postgame show. Scott Hamilton wrapping it up for Terry and Jay. Jay and Terry, they're off doing stuff. SoCon Championship tonight, 7 o'clock, Furman versus ETSU. Yeah, there's a lot of mid-major games tonight. I'm still, though, I don't want to say sideways. I'm just disappointed, I guess, that the Coastal, the CAA, that the top two teams are not in it, and that its champion is more than likely going to get seriously hosed by the NCAA selection committee and get a crappy bid, which they might have anyhow. Campbell beat UNC Wilmington 85-70 in the quarterfinal, and then in another quarterfinal, Towson just whooped up on Charleston 81-56. Chris Mack, his season's done. Unless they do one of those, what is it, the CBA or whatever, those other tournaments. I know you got the NIT. I don't see that happening. But the other one, I think you actually pay to play in. I can't see them doing that. I can't see Charleston doing that. But if they want to play more, I mean, if you had a lot of returning players, which is always a fluid situation nowadays given the transfer portal, if you knew the majority of your roster was coming back, I could see the value of playing in one of those pay-for-play tournaments simply to get more reps, to give them a longer season, another opportunity to continue to develop their games, develop synergy, this, that, and the other, like bowl games. That's the biggest thing for bowl games. Bowl games are valuable, not because they make money, which they don't for the schools, but it's additional practice time. It's additional reps. It's opportunity for guys to continue to develop, to show up, to better themselves, and carry that over to the next season. That is, unless you're like a Notre Dame and you ball up and you say, "Oh, I'm not playing a bowl game." Still sideways over that mess. Other than that, yeah, it's just all mid-majors tonight. Oregon State and Gonzaga. I take it back. The West Coast Conference. That's pretty good. St. Mary's ranked team playing Santa Clara at 11:30 our time on ESPN2. That's a semifinal. Another semifinal, Gonzaga and Oregon State. Still reconciling Oregon State not being in the Pac-12, not even having a Pac-12. I guess that'll come back into existence next year. I mean, it's kind of playing as part of the West Coast Conference this year, and then there'll be a G5 version of the Pac-12 coming next year. That was sad. That was such an historic conference. And to have it just kind of be collateral damage, to be roadkill to expansion by the alphas, the SEC and the Big Ten, I just thought was pretty sad. ACC tournament starts tomorrow. Pitt versus Stanford, 2 o'clock. Syracuse SMU, 4:30. Wake Forest and Virginia Tech at 7. And the winner of that game will play the Clemson Tigers on Wednesday. It's up at the Spectrum Center in Atlanta. I'm shocked, actually, that SMU is in the Tuesday sessions. SMU, 19-12, pretty good basketball team. I got to watch them play a few times this year. Finished 8-10 in the ACC, a much improved 8-10 in the ACC. But I thought they would have been better than having first day relegation, for lack of a better word, in the tournament. Boopie Miller, Duke and Ball. He is one of the best players that we have not heard of. I'm going to throw that out there. He is one of the best players in America that we don't talk about. He's a senior, and the dude can ball. But so much of the oxygen in the room has been sucked up by these freshmen this year. The freshman class is just absolutely bonkers throughout the country. And not just, I mean, the SEC is blessed with a bunch of them. But they're everywhere. Shoot, the National Player of the Year is probably a freshman, Cam Boozer at Duke. We had to put together 3 5-person All-American teams, 5-man All-American teams for the Associated Press. And I had Cam Boozer as my Player of the Year. I had Fred Hoiberg, the coach at Nebraska, as the Coach of the Year. But I had Cam Boozer as the Player of the Year. And then I was going down the list, and I kept looking, and I go, freshman. I don't know that we've ever seen anything like it. And I discussed it earlier in the program, and I think it's still true. If we would have had a better freshman class ever in the history of basketball, I have to think it would have come over the last 25 years since the advent of one and done. But we've never had anything like this. It's just like a harmonic convergence of elite talent in one class. It's absolutely fantastic. I asked Seth Greenberg about it. I was like, Coach, how do you explain this? And he says it's the youth system one, but USA basketball being involved. The governing body, the main thing about the Olympic basketball, and integrating itself into all these other programs for kids growing up, and that's why we're seeing such development. It's crazy. Hey, that's it for the show. I want to thank David Cloninger, the Post and Courier, coming by. Paul Maneri, baseball coach of South Carolina, and Lulu Kesson of the Greenville News. My name is Scott Hamilton. You can follow me on Twitter/X at Scott H Sports. I'll be back in this chair tomorrow for Terry and Jay. Otherwise, until then, we're out.
All right, good news that problem on I-77 that involved about 3 vehicles total, including a big Coca-Cola truck. That's pretty much cleared up now. They're just towing away the last car now and getting that out of there. So 77, just slow down a little bit because there's still some emergency crews on the scene there and a tow truck, of course, so be careful going through there. That's at Wilson Boulevard, 77 northbound. Now, your weather outlook for tonight, 61 for an overnight low. Tomorrow, we could see some morning showers, 85 for your high. Wednesday, 88 for a high. Thursday, though, we'll see it cool off all the way down to 70, and then overnight, Thursday to Friday, 37 for a low.